write down one word on it, and Adam will spontaneously create a rant around it live on stage.
Steampunk. Oh, Jesus Christ. You guys know what steampunk is? This is basically rockabilly for people that make more than $37,000 a year.
Adam Carolla is unprepared. February 8th at Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut.
Hey, welcome to CarCast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndrea. We got Bill Goldberg on the phone with us again, and of course, our buddy Alistair Weaver from Edmunds.com is in the studio with us. How are you guys?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So, before we get started, I want to tell you about Geico. Of course, you want to save some money on car insurance, go to geico.com. And Dodge, hurry into the Dodge President's Day event for a great deal on Dodge all-wheel drive lineup. And of course, CarCast. CarCast is brought to you by Zybar for better engine performance, horsepower, fuel economy, and lower under-hood temperatures. Zybar is an ultra-thin, high-temperature coating that reduces radiant heat by 90%. So put Zybar on, take heat off. You can learn more at zycoat.com. Zycoat, you know, is the company. Zybar is the product. Check them out at zycoat.com. All right, so Bill, I appreciate you calling in. I know you got a busy schedule going on. You were literally on set right now filming new episodes of NCIS Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, and you know, it couldn't be any more fulfilling. I just killed 3 guys. It's just wonderful. Everybody should do that before lunch.
Right. Sounds fantastic. Looking forward to it. We loved your other episodes, and I like. You know what I like about you, Bill? You're a hustler. You're always on the
I'm a hustler, man.
You're a hustler. You like to work.
You gotta be, right?
Right. You like to work. You know,
Well,
I like
I don't
that.
know about that. I mean, you know,
Do what you gotta do.
I like to support my car habit, you know, and
That's
my
right.
wife's horse habit.
That's right.
Dodge is coming out with a new car, obviously, here soon, and I got to start working for it.
Got to start working for it. Quick update on your rides, because we might have very limited time with you. Anybody can bang on your door and say they need you any minute. So let's just get a quick update on what's been happening. We missed you, I think, last week as well. You were traveling a bit as well. You were traveling in Atlanta or something. What's any updates on your rides?
Oh, golly gee. Well, you know, thanks to you and the Excel guys, this week Excel will be taking my Red IS Dodge Red IS and doing a little bit of clear brown protection with the ceramic coat on top of it and a little tint action. Actually, a tint that saves your skin and not just there for your look. But, you know, I'm going to try their product out, man. I've seen and heard great things about it. We had him on the show, and he sold me on it. And let's see what we can do. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, so we like those guys. They were very interesting. So how much are you covering? Are you doing all of the car?
I'm covering the entire car.
So, and they recommended you use their main product, which is a high gloss on all the painted surfaces, the glossy, the hold on here, triple nickel paint. But then they have a satin bra wrap, like a clear bra satin on the flat black hood and roof and trunk, right?
Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't do anything but accentuate the look. Mm-hmm. And I suggest that anyone and everyone out there with that type of paint on their car, do yourself some good and take your elbow grease out of it and wrap the damn thing.
Yeah.
And it'll be a lot easier to take care of. Plus, it'll protect the company. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. I haven't had these kind of panels before. I haven't dealt with the fingerprints and all that kind of stuff on them, and now I'm seeing the advantage of getting them because it is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it out. It's gonna be it's gonna look awesome. And like we were saying with those guys, that technology has already come a long way. That it's really tough to notice a wrap, good quality clear bra. Yeah, you know, it's tough to notice it now because they polish up really pretty nicely now. And anyway, so awesome, man. So that's going to be good. Let's see what else we got going. We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
You know, our buddies at Hellion were awesome and helped me pick up my '69 Blazer that has been out in the middle of the desert the last 3 years, basically. Yeah. And it is sitting at the house in front of the garage with the 350 sitting in the trunk. So in need of a complete restoration. So we'll be figuring out where and when that thing will be taken out. And I think we may be getting the fuel tire car back from Mooresville here soon. I am maybe doing a different route as opposed to helicopter route, which I don't know if they've got no control yet. I think I'm going to give her a bowl with Kelly on the phone call and see if they want a twin turbo with someday.
Yeah, because why not? I mean, twin turbo in the Hellcat.
Yeah, I always thought it like that.
Right?
Yeah, you know, why not? Right. And before I forget, since I did do NCIS, because I'm doing it today and the rest of the week, and we all know in these conversations I usually use, I had an absolutely death-defying drive this morning. I'm in the game with my semi-drag radio on the back of my charger, and I'm going to hang up this phone, and I'm going to get a hotel room, and I ain't putting myself through that again.
Oh no, I don't know why you're drove that up here. Because actually, based on I think some of Alistair's advice, you picked up the Range Rover.
Yeah, did you buy that in the end, Bill?
The in-laws are in town, and they're going to drive around in the Range Rover for the next 3 days. But I can't have that. I can't be selfish. I'll just die in the process. But I was actually just going to rent a car.
It's good for the throttle control, though. It's good to...
Yeah, you really got to feather it. Oh, speaking of feathering the throttle, I think next week we're going to have our friend Leah Pritchett back in the studio, so we're going to talk some drag racing as well. So...
And listen, dude, don't give me any shit because I'll probably show up in the studio for that. And don't think, even though Leah's a beautiful girl, it's because of that. Okay, it's scheduling. I may have something next week to shoot for Dodge up in LA. So
you didn't turn up for me there, Bill. To be fair.
Yeah, that's to be fair.
Oh well, you know what? I'm working today, so overtime. But Alistair, you know how much I greatly appreciate having you there mentally and visually.
Right on. Oh man, I hate to complain about the rain out here because so many other places in this country are getting devastating, freezing cold. But you're right. This is our bad day. Is you're having a hard time driving your drag radials from Southern California to LA.
It's moronic when you listen to it and when I utter it. But, it is what it is. Everything's relative.
Yeah.
Well, my parents
it's not something we deal with all the time, man. And it's not. It's the hyper-planning that just makes your butt pucker. I mean, I aged at least 7 years on the drive up this morning at 3:30. So, never again.
Yeah, my parents are over here from the UK, and I've spent the last year sort of selling California as a place where the sun always shines. They arrived, it's been like a kind of wet spring day in the UK for a while.
Terrible, right? It's been terrible.
So that's who we can blame for the rain? They brought it here?
They brought it with them.
But I'm taking one for the team and going to the Chicago Auto Show tomorrow when it will be minus a lot.
A lot. Yeah. All right, so we got some stuff we're going to try to get into. We want to recap CES, maybe a little bit of the Detroit Auto Show. You mentioned the 69 Blazer. Chevy's got a new Blazer that Alistair's already driven. Before we kick that off, I'm going to tell you guys about Geico. You've heard this before. Everybody's got a to-do list. You drop off dry cleaning, pick up some milk, and now you can save hundreds of dollars on car insurance to that list, and you don't have to drop off or pick up anything. Just go to geico.com, and in 15 minutes you can be saving 15% or more on car insurance. So if you want some extra money in your pocket, this is the most rewarding to do you can do today. Check out geico.com. All right, CES is, again, we've had this conversation about how more and more car companies are starting to debut cars at different events, things like Rennsport and Goodwood and Monterey Car Week and even E3, and certainly over the years CES has been a big place to maybe not debut a car, which they do, but debut an entire technology that's going to help lead the sales of cars. I remember, I think it was 2014, Adam and I did a CarCast Live in the Ford booth to talk about Ford Sync and some of the technology they were doing back then. So, Alistair, what did you see at CES?
Well, you're right, Matt. It's kind of it's an interesting show because it's really all about TVs and cameras and everything else. In the middle of all this, you've got the automakers not quite sure what to do with it. Do they debut? I mean, Hyundai showed off the Elevate, which was this crazy kind of cross between a robot and a car that has a little electric motor in each wheel, and then it can pick itself up and scramble over over objects, and we actually gave it one of our Edmunds Tech Driven Awards, which we were handing out.
I saw it. It looked like it was supposed to be like travel on the moon or Mars, or it looked like some sort of space vehicle.
It looked like a kind of modern interpretation of the moon buggy.
Yeah.
But it was cool technology, and there was some good thinking behind it. And then on the other hand, you have manufacturers like Mercedes had the new CLA there, which was kind of a conventional car launch. The other one that caught our eye is Byton, which is a Chinese electric car brand, but actually all the engineering and design is being done here in California.
Byton, like
B-Y-T-O-N. And the people behind it are actually, some of it's Faraday Future, which also went under, but also a lot of the engineering know-how is ex-BMW. So the CEO is Carson Breifler, who was actually gave the world the BMW i8. So there's a lot of know-how behind it. There's big screens inside, and it's a real Tesla rival. And this thing's coming in. Well, we're going to see a production version later this year. And of all the new electric manufacturers out there, well, probably Byton, followed by Rivian, wants to watch.
Why are we starting to see startup car companies get into the electric space like that? It's so expensive to create a car company. I mean, we've seen what Fisker tried to do. We've seen the amount of cash that a Tesla can go through. Like, why do a startup? Why do a Byton? Why do a Rivian? Why do that as opposed to, I don't know, like
make a hairdryer or something, do something
simple.
Yeah,
or if you're trying to, if you have some element that you think is super inventive, why not try to take that around to some of the existing companies or some of the existing partners of big companies, like a Magna or somebody who's making the parts for them. Why not go to those guys and go, I've got some great technology and maybe my little company can develop this, why build a whole car company and why not just focus on a piece of the technology? Like if you've got really great, a drive system or a battery or a charging system, like why not just focus on that? Why have to build a car company from scratch? It seems like a lot of work.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I think for the first time, if you think about it, since the gasoline engine overtook the steam car in around kind of 1900 and something, this is the first time in 120 years that we've actually seen a kind of paradigm shift, that we're actually now looking at different propulsion systems, installing electric, autonomy is on the way. And producing an electric car is so much more simple than producing a gas car and everything that goes with a building engine. And if you look at what Byton are actually doing when you break down the components, they're effectively going into a kind of supermarket and picking things off the shelf. So Bosch are heavily involved in it. You look at the brakes, you recognise different brands there. So it's not like they're starting from scratch and doing it all themselves. What they're doing is going into the market and saying, well, we'll have Brembo for the brakes, we'll go Bosch for this, we'll go for this for the battery, we'll go Michelin for the tyres. I'm making brands up, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
So effectively what they're doing is hiring people with experience, like from BMW, and they're going into the market and saying, right, like this, and this. So all that Byton is actually doing is a bit of styling, some brand work, and then building the infrastructure to make and sell these things. So it's still a huge undertaking, don't get me wrong, but it is so much easier in the world of electric cars to start a brand from scratch than it was 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, but you have to add government regulations and crash testing, airbags. And you're right.
Sure.
They can get airbags from somebody else, not Takata, but somebody. and then dealer network and warranties and parts and service and just like, what about all the after sales stuff?
For sure. I mean, we've seen from Tesla how they've struggled.
Because those cars break all the time.
And all the warranty and everything else. But there's a lot of money in China. Byton is China. China is financed. Rivian has a lot of money from the Saudis, and they're not showing cash either, despite all the recent political kerfuffles over there. So there's a lot of people, a lot of money saying actually we can get into the market at a really pivotal moment. And a lot of people say looking at Ford is behind the curve on electric vehicles. Look at a lot of the established players and saying they've got massive infrastructure costs. They've got, think about all the healthcare and everything else that goes with being a Ford or a GM, saying actually we're lean, we're agile, we can start from scratch. It's a big opportunity for them. And I hear your point, but if you've got cash in the bank and you can ride out those first few years, there's a huge opportunity.
Bill, a question for you. What's it going to take to get you to consider an electric vehicle at some point? Is it going to be an electric Porsche? Yeah. Or would it be an electric F-150, which they're going to be doing?
No, it's going to be that Porsche. I think I'm just going to go ahead and put that deposit down and still take them and add myself in with. There's no question that will be the first electric car that I.
Yeah, now when you look at that car, you can't skip over the Audi, because the Audi largely based on the Porsche platform, right?
Yeah, I mean, the e-tron, I mean, this is where the big groups, Audi and Porsche can share a lot of technologies behind the scenes, and that will make a difference. The other interesting thing that's coming, I had in the office yesterday the guys from Lotus.
Yeah.
Lotus has been some wonderful brand equity. We all think of Senna and Jim Clark and all that sort of thing. And they are now owned by Geely, which is another Chinese brand, which owns Link, but also owns Volvo as well, and Polestar, which is Volvo's new electric luxury brand. So they've added now Lotus to the portfolio. And if you think about that, Volvo, you've got a Chinese startup brand plus Volvo, plus Polestar, plus Lotus, and Lotus have got really ambitious plans. And
they always have, though.
You've heard it all before, right? But this time, it's not Proton, it's Geely.
This time somebody else is paying for it.
This time there is proper investment, and it's exciting. It really is.
I guess it'll be interesting to see what comes from that. I like the idea of electric cars using electrification for increased performance. Maybe not unworldly stuff, not like LaFerrari P1 McLaren, but I'm talking like NSX and things like that. Like, there's been sort of, for a long time, there's sort of Chevy Bolt, and then the supercars, and now it's starting to trickle into like you said, like Tesla and stuff. But I was over here at the Super Bowl party. I was talking to a bunch of the guys, and Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy's wife Molly, and she has Jimmy rolled up in an S63 Mercedes, and Molly had a Model X, and they both loved them for different reasons. And she said, she likes the Tesla, likes what it represents, loves its electric. She had a couple buggy things with the doors not opening all the way, or opening, this and that, and she said, what would you say? What would you recommend? And I said, this is the year. This year and next year, start to pay attention to where all the car companies we are used to are going to start making a big play. And maybe they've sort of just been kind of gearing up, but you can't look over the fact, like Bill said, like the Porsche and the Audi e-tron, and what BMW's going to be doing, and what Ford's going to be doing an F-150. Like, these guys have been making cars for 100 years. What's their take going to be on the all-electric car? Because we have these companies that are the startups, the Teslas, the Rivian, the Byton, Okay, but what happens when companies that have been doing this for a while, and they just have things like the after-sales network in place, and they have the deals in place, like you said, with the Michelins and the Brembos of the world. They've got those relationships, so they can focus a little bit more on the technology and not have to reinvent the wheel, per se, on the car itself. They can take existing platforms. You can take, for example, a Panamera platform and start making your Taycan or Taycan, or whatever it's going to be called. Because they, at the very least, companies like Porsche, they have a certain performance benchmark. That all the Porsches need to reach a certain amount of performance just to be called a Porsche, right? And they have that experience. And so my advice was, hey, let's not ignore big car companies coming out with their significant electric vehicles.
It is. I think this is a really big year for Tesla, particularly, because it reminds me. It's a silly example. It reminds me of, you guys heard of TVR in the UK?
Yeah,
TVR is fabulous. They made. If you were to drive from if you gave me a car for a day, you would take a TVR because they were loud, they were obnoxious, they were fiberglass, and everything else. And they suddenly became a really culty following, and they got to about building 1,500 cars a year. And then as soon as they hit that threshold, it stopped being guys like us who will accept things going wrong, and became, city guys, that sort of thing, who expected it to start and expected nothing to go wrong. And as soon as they hit that threshold, they were talking to people who wouldn't tolerate faults. And then the Boxster came along, and it was, I really want a TVR, but can I trust it? And then really, when I went to go to the airport and it started, so suddenly, everybody bought a Boxster, and that was the end of TVR. And in some ways, you can kind of see that with Tesla. Tesla's at a real tipping point, because as soon as Audi, Mercedes, Porsche, all of whom will launch this year in the market, are people going to stick with Tesla? Are there enough fanboys out there to keep saying, I want the Model 3, I want the Model 3, when, they're really credible, great alternative. We're actually doing an interesting piece of work which we're going to launch shortly, looking at properly measuring EV range and EV efficiency. Now everybody talks about range, 200 miles, 250 miles, but what we're starting to measure is efficiency, so equivalent to miles per gallon.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting because you certainly start, as people start to think about what they're paying in electricity, then the efficiency, how much juice you're putting back in your car overnight, becomes quite significant. And we're doing a big piece of work looking at the true cost of having electric.
Yeah, so I think you guys touched on that. Talk about mainstream car companies. Jaguar's already out there with the I-Pace, and I think Dan Edmonds was driving the I-Pace, and he was talking about why it was just eating so much power, basically. It's just like it met the range requirements. It did what it said it was going to do. It was fast, it was nice, it was comfortable, it looked like a Jag, it looked good. But it wasn't as efficient, I think he was saying. And I don't know how you guys are going to break it down. You're going to have to sort of educate us on, what you're going to be doing.
You basically end up with it was equivalent of MPG, and not call it MPG because that's a bit of a misnomer. But you're right about the Jag. I mean, you can solve range by defaulting on an ever bigger battery, but that adds cost and it adds weight, neither of which is desirable. So what you want is efficiency. Then we're back in the old world of lightweight and aerodynamics and all the things that go with making a gas car efficient.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting piece of work, and things are changing so fast. I mean, it is a really exciting time, and much of us still enjoy GT500s and everything else. And,
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I was in
Twin turbo Hellcats.
I was at the Detroit Auto Show, and you looked around. And actually, at CES was an interesting one because Ford had a stand there. And Ford's kind of corporate identity recently has been about shipping containers. And you're in the middle of CES, you're surrounded by all this crazy tech, the LG with these crazy screens and everything else. And then Ford has got shipping containers, and it just looks so old school.
Yeah.
It just looked like this was like time had gone.
Yeah.
And then you turn to Detroit GT500, and we're going to love that car, of course we are. 7 horsepower, all the rest of it. But there is a kind of feeling now that it's a bit, it's a time that's passed.
Yeah, well, I saw the GT500 in Scottsdale, Fair Jackson. Actually, the time's up. That car's badass.
Do you know what really worries me about that car, which is really irritating? It's the same with the 911 Touring as well, for Porsche. Is that if you want the track back version, you want that performance, you take out the rear seats. And I have a kid on the way, so I want the rear seats back.
Well, you could just buy the rear seat, just put it back in.
You can't in the Porsche. I don't know whether you can in the GT. I'm trying to find an answer on the GT500.
Anything can be done. Anything can be done. Look, I love the GT500, and because it still creates that rivalry. Now we can have all the great articles and tests of GT500 versus Red Eye, and we like that stuff. It's fun.
For sure.
It's fun to see that stuff. And that sort of creative competition is what we love between the companies.
Definitely.
And we thought it was gone for a number of years, and thank God it is not.
Yeah.
How long will it be here?
But how do you feel about a GT500 without a stick shift?
Yeah, this thing's going to be paddle only.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's the same as the Red Eye without stick shift. I'm not a fan. By any stretch, I want to bang through the gears. It's just a more fun experience, and I can't believe that they've let something out like over the vehicles without the option.
Yeah. Wait, so the Red Eye doesn't have a stick? You can't get it with a stick?
It does not. No.
You see, everybody's talking about performance, but missing the point that these things ultimately, they are about going fast in a straight line, but frankly, you get by a Porsche or something if it's all about track performance, it's about having fun and an old-world experience. It'd be interesting what the collector market does as well, because I was thinking this GT500, probably the last with a crazy supercharger and everything else before electrification comes. So actually, is this the one to buy and wrap up in Conwell and all the rest of it? But actually, maybe the last one is, the last stick shift GT500.
Yeah, which was a fantastic car as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is going to be kind of interesting. You're right, they have to go after a performance number, but you do take a little bit of that fun out of it, Like, they could say, oh, we have a GT500, and let's say it runs 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. But if you get the manual transmission, it runs 4.1. I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't care if it's half a second slower. I don't care.
If we just check out our YouTube channel, Carlos Lago and the team has just done a comparison of our test track between a GT3 with the paddles and a GT3 with the stick, and it's a fraction slower. And a lot of that is actually less in the gear change, more launching it off the line. But it's a great film because it really makes the point of how much more fun he's having, and the difference in performance is so marginal.
Yeah,
It's a good film. Check it out.
And I would imagine that the Porsches, the difference is going to be fractions, but when you get into, you know, to the cars that Bill and I love, the big heavy muscle cars and stuff, I think it's going to be, it will have more of a difference in it, just because of the car and, you know, just the lack of traction and things like that the computer can kind of really take control over when you get into the paddle shift version of it. So I don't know, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's still going to be great. You know, we're still going to love them. But it is interesting that, and by the way, I mean, the GT500, we're saying it's a 7-speed automatic, but I sort of define, you have your paddle shifted cars, I just sort of define the automatic as something with a torque converter in it, whereas the GT500 is a dual clutch 7-speed manual that's paddle shifted. You know, it's and I believe Tremec, the guys who've been making their transmissions, I've got a 6-speed Tremec in mine, in my Cobra that I swapped in. It's a Tremec 7-speed that they've developed their first paddle shifted, you know, 7-speed. So my thought is it should be fairly easy to make it a manual if you wanted to make it manual. I'm sure you're going to find one at SEMA or something. Someone's going to make a manual swap kit for it. But you know, but for the people that want to drag race the GT500, the paddle shift is going to be the fastest thing out there.
Yeah, the problem is all tied to the electronics and everything else these days. They're just bolting a manual back in.
Yeah. It'll be done. I want to talk a little bit about the Detroit Auto Show as well, but first I'm going to tell you guys some more about Zycoat. You know, there's a lot of engines out there, and they place the hot components real close to the air intakes. Manifold, exhaust, right by the intake, by plug wires, by the carburetors, you know, brake lines, power steering lines, and it creates all this heat. Heat is the enemy of smoke. Rob's words. Before, your only options were wraps, tapes, and ceramics. Now there's Zybar, a DIY high-temp coating that reduces radiant heat by 90%. This is a resin-based polymer foam that withstands temperatures far in excess of what the engine environment can create, and the cost is about a third of what ceramic foam costs. A single application of Zybar to your manifold, exhaust system, or headers will control heat, resulting in higher horsepower and torque. CarCast listeners can receive 15% discount plus free shipping on all orders. Just enter the promo code CarCast when you purchase at Zycoat.com. That's CYCOAT.com. Use promo code CarCast and 15% discount plus free shipping. Good, check that out. All right, Detroit Auto Show. We talked about the GT500. In previous episodes, we talked about the Supra. And you know, our feeling on the Supra is people don't necessarily love the looks. We hope it represents the old car. Before we spend a bunch of time on the Supra, we need to drive. we need to drive that car and find out. I'm sure you guys are going to get it before we do. So
yeah, we'll get into that pretty quickly. I mean, if you think about what's underneath it, it's a bit of which is, you know, it's not a bad place to start. 335 horsepower, a little people said that's not enough, and you know, it's $50,000 car. What else should we buy on that? More horsepower. I mean, I had a bit of belief it's not all about horsepower. And if this 335 is not good enough in that size of car, if you've got it really handling and really working for you, it's a tricky one for them, because you're right, the reaction to the way it looks has been pretty universally negative.
yeah, but I mean, I saw the car at Barrett Jackson. There was a few things I liked. There was a few things that I didn't like. I thought the back looked pretty good. The sort of side vent that it has going on. When I got up on it, I realized it's fake, and it's got some fake honeycomb grill blocked out. That's bullshit to me. I don't like the fake grill stuff, and that's coming from a Mustang guy, right? You know, but they put a lot of attention into a 50-50 weight distribution, and it's a straight six, right? Turbo straight six.
Yeah, it's the BMW engine. Yeah.
You know, which is a fantastic engine, and the fact that you're with the turbo again, like the old Supra, it seems very easy at this point to probably start getting into that engine and upgrading turbos and adding boost, and you know, so I'm sure you're a tune away, just from full 30-40 horsepower. You know, that's it. You're probably a air intake and a tune away from.
And I think Toyota themselves will do that. Will be a TRD version, I'm sure, in due course. And you know, it's an obvious way. We'll do a triple test, and so we'll probably have the Cayman in there. It's interesting, that market. There's also things like the
No manual.
Double negative. Yes, double negative. Yes.
Yeah.
No manual.
What did you just say?
I don't know.
No manual in a Supra, Bill. Come on.
Unreal.
Right?
There will be a manual version of. We just took the new 911, the 992 as well, and at the moment that's just a Carrera S with the paddles, but there is a manual version coming of that.
Yeah.
There will be a manual GT3, and it serves a niche, doesn't it? But it's a diminishing niche.
Wait, now I get what Porsche did, right? They said, here's the new car, everything is a little bit better, a little tighter, a little faster, because they released it with the PDK transmission or whatever the new version is. If they released it with a manual, they would say, well, it's not as fast as the other car. So they had to go with the fast version now, and then they could do the enthusiast version. But yeah, with this new Porsche platform, I am looking forward to the turbo. Everything's turbo, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Turbo with a capital T.
Yeah, turbo with a capital T. And GTS.
GTS is normally the one. It normally comes a couple of years later, but
Yeah.
it's normally the one to.
That's the one to get, right?
Yeah.
Because usually you're getting like a lot of the cool turbo options. You get some cool, Alcantara bits on the inside, and the previous gen you got the center lock wheels. So the turbo didn't have center lock wheels, but the Turbo S did. Now you have to spend $180,000 to get the center locks, or you get the GTS and it has the center locks. And you're right, it's the bang for the buck. But I've always thought it always has been the bang for the buck for the Porsche lineup. You even think of the Cayenne.
Yeah.
What was first gen Cayenne GTS?
Cayenne as well.
Yeah.
GTS is fabulous. They also, as an investment, I was looking at 997, which is the previous last full generation.
Yeah.
911 before the 991, and now we're on to 992. And yeah, GTS hold their value really well, because if you're starting to go from being an old car to a collector car, like a late model 997, GTS is worth a lot more, isn't it?
So now all the Porsches are turbo, but the naming convention is, Carrera, S, 4S, and you'll have a turbo, which is the more power version, but that's just because they've always done that. Are we going to get a Taycan turbo?
Yes,
we are. We're going to get a Taycan turbo.
Absolutely going to get a
Which
Taycan.
it's not going to have a turbo. Yeah, right? It's just going to be the longer, more powerful range, longer range, more powerful. Like the Tesla P100D or whatever, we're going to have the Taycan turbo.
Yeah,
Which would be interesting. I'd love to see somebody do, because there's no real changing gears in an electric car, but a manual gear changing electric car could be.
You'd have to fake it, wouldn't you?
You'd have
That'd be
to.
interesting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's this company that does an electric conversion on C7 Corvettes. We saw them up at Gordon McCall's dealer in Monterey. And I mean, they take a $70,000 Corvette and they turn it into a $450,000 Corvette. But it's an electric motor in the front where the conventional engine goes, and it mates up to the 7-speed manual transmission, and you do shift gears. And I don't know how.
That'd be interesting.
And I'm curious how to drive it. I know it's a beefy driveline because we can make 1,000 horsepower with these things. Our buddy Ken Lingenfelder can make 1,000 horsepower with these things. But you gotta think about the wear and tear on that driveline with that amount of torque. And if you can shift that thing hard enough, what does it do?
Well, that might also talk about why the GT500 hasn't got a stick as well. That they're worried about they were about having to drive it as well, and all the warranty and everything else.
They can just break shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how this is given. Like, I was looking at Car Week last year about electric E-Type as well, which is really cool. Again, crazy money.
Yeah, so there's going to be a Taycan turbo. It won't really be a turbo, but it'll be, the name of the fast version of it.
Yeah.
Is it Taycan?
Taycan turbo. Taycan with a Taycan.
It's so weird.
I just call it a Mission E and get away.
Mission E worked for me.
Such a good name.
It was, yeah.
I was talking to some Porsche people at Porsche, and they tend to agree with that. So
who makes the decisions? Anyway, all right. Let's get into some. Let's get into some Detroit Auto Shows. What's going on?
Well, it was an interesting show. It was the last one ever to be in January. Next year,
for a good reason.
Next year it moves to June. Yeah, the last one again.
Because they want people to show up, other than the press.
It was kind of sad, There was no. I mean, I've been going to that when I was still based in the UK. I was going every year, and this year, no European press. You really got a sense of it. Had this real end of the century feeling about it.
Why do you think that happened? I read about that. Why do you think it happened?
The biggest thing, Bill, is it's just so expensive to do auto shows. It's great. It costs, I think at the last Frankfurt Auto Show, Audi, or the one before, Audi spent like 200 million euros or something insane. So it's horrifically expensive to do. I mean, Ford can drop $1 million on a press conference alone, and that's a 15-minute press conference. So what you're seeing now is in the world of Instagram and digitally, you can talk to an audience so much easier directly. And if you spend a couple of $1 million on Instagram, you probably get more results than a press conference at Detroit. And it's a bit of a shame. So I mean, auto shows have always worked for two reasons: one, the media coverage, and secondly, just having hundreds of thousands of consumers go through. But they both need to work together, and unfortunately, a lot of manufacturers now are saying they can just spend their money better elsewhere. So Detroit is trying to reinvent itself, launched in June, and do more kind of experiential stuff. So instead of just having static vehicles, you'll be able to, do little drivey events and all that sort of thing around it, because June makes it easier. But it's also, in terms of Detroit, it's a market thing. So if you're a luxury brand, I think the luxury market in Michigan is like 1.2%. So if you're Mercedes or Audi or any of those guys, why would you pay all those millions of dollars to be in Detroit? You're better off being in New York or LA. So I don't think auto shows are dead. It's just that Detroit will have to kind of reimagine itself. And I'm personally feeling, I think they've got 1 or 2 years to pull it off. If not, it's going to be quite a regional show, which is a real shame because it was the iconic start to the year.
Well, I mean, what's interesting though is
downfall of the car culture again.
I mean, at least the traditional car show. I mean, Ferrari hasn't shown up at the LA Auto Show in years, and this is a huge one.
Yeah, and they do Geneva, but even Geneva, Ford, there's no Jaguar Land Rover. Geneva Europe has two big shows: Geneva in March, and then either Frankfurt and Paris alternate in October. And I went to Paris last year. That was down. It's changing times. It really is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there has to be something good over that show.
There was some interesting stuff. I mean, obviously the Supra launch there. We saw some heavy duty trucks. The Ram heavy duty with 1,000 pound.
It tows like 35,000 pounds.
And we've just had Dan Edmonds actually literally overnight on the Chevy Silverado heavy duty.
Yeah.
And that is now claiming we can tow an extra like 500 pounds, and it's got a bit more. So it's obvious that they've heard that in Detroit, and they go, just turn the boost up, twiddle with the transmission, or do something just to for one-upmanship. So, truck market continues to be huge. It's huge for us at Edmonds. That was exciting back into some of the real world. Cadillac had an XT6, which is a big 3-row SUV. I'm not sure where Caddy is at the moment. That was pretty disappointing. It just looked like a slightly tarted up Chevy, to be honest. Lexus had a couple of tuner cars.
Is Cadillac selling? Is Lincoln selling? I feel like Lincoln is up their game. I don't know if it's translating into sales, but you look at the new Lincolns, you look at the Cadillacs, and I got to tell you, the Lincolns are kicking the shit out of Cadillac as far as styling and luxury appointments. And
I think you're absolutely right. I think Lincoln have just suddenly set on who and what they are. The Navigator is a great vehicle if you've got a big family, and it's a $70,000 plus vehicle, but it works. It's what I kind of feel like what an American luxury brand should be. Aviator looked good. Cadillac, they just fired their CEO. They've moved from New York back to Detroit, and when you look at Lincoln,
so they're going after that. I feel like Cadillac and Lincoln both have like one last hurrah in them. Like if they don't pull it off with these new cars, I don't know where they're going to go.
What I think is interesting, guys, is you look at a list of the top 10 least selling cars. I think it was past last year, and Corvette's on there. They sold 18,000 units in 2018, and then I know Lincoln's on there. I don't know if it's the Navigator or that four-door car, but those are pretty astonishing numbers. And there are a couple cars on that list that are going to floor both of them. And Alex, you'll probably know, but there's a couple on there that are pretty amazing. And that Corvette was one of them. I mean, did you guys think that would be one of the top 10 least sold cars last year?
It's an interesting market. To some extent, you can skew the market by how much incentives you give and what price you want to sell at and everything else. But you're right. And then you look at the truck market and still 800, 900,000 units a year, and it's huge numbers. I mean, when we look at the traffic to our site, which is always a great barometer of where who's buying what. Everything is SUVs. That kind of mid-sized compact SUV is just huge. That's what people want. That's what people are.
But I remember you in studio a year ago, and we were talking about SUVs might be, the big ones. No, actually, we were talking about the fact that they were on their way back, because we thought with the onset of the electric cars that they were weeding out the SUV. Don't be driving the big gas guzzler cars. And now, Jesus Christ! I mean, look how many of them are still on the road.
Well, interesting. Ford's first